Hey, Brian,
Oh, what's
uh,
up?
how things?
I don't know. I've been down lately. I haven't checked. Let me see my portfolio. Oh my goodness. What is going on? Randy, I need some support here. Tell me what's going on.
I think there was a good chance that about 90% of the entire Tesla community was watching had two screens open this morning, one for their portfolio and one for the stock, just watching back and forth. I mean, it was really intense last week when we were at 420.69 and everybody
hmm
was trying to get the screenshot. That was pretty funny.
And now we're looking at other funny numbers, and I think we'll see. And the thing is, people said when it hit 420.69, they're like, boy, it just bounced right around there. Yeah,
Yeah.
because a lot of people had sells at 420.69 or buys,
Right.
and it'll just keep bouncing around there as everyone shuffles out their trades.
Yeah.
And some people just bought or sold one share.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
It was fun. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's good when we have these kind of times. So, what do you think? Just in general, what's your feeling about this crazy run up that only Brian Wong predicted, um, and which has already blown past my number for the end of January. I was at all-time high for the end of January, and it's gone past that and past 450. And what do you think about all that?
Well, the first thing is they had to do it before January to make a fool of Randy Kirk. They just had to. There are a few things going on, and I think Hans C. Nelson also called it. But you know, we're only looking at the hits and not the misses. There's a lot of misses in the mix as well. So what I think, so what's going on? Well, the sentiment is up. People are very encouraged. A lot of investors on the sidelines are saying this might, the next administration might be good for the company, or it might not be as bad as expected for the company. Those are both reasonable things for a person to deduce. Um, Others who don't share that opinion are moving fewer shares. That's all that matters. If 51% of people are happy, then that can move it up. Then we've got some little news. We've got the Corpus Christi lithium refinery has begun. They fired up the kiln.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're not going to be refining anything today because the rest of the factory of the refinery is not yet operational. But it is a big first step. And if you're looking at Tesla as something other than a car company, this is a milestone without a doubt. This means they are now officially in the refining business.
Right.
And whether that's as affordable as importing it is secondary when you have to balance out the import tariffs on raw materials. So it could be 10, 20, 30% more expensive. And just between the logistics of getting it here and the import duties, it could be still cheaper to refine domestically. Then you've got the Cybercab. And yes, this came out months ago, 2 months ago, but we have gotten new insights on it since then that have gotten quite a bit of attention, and
Yeah.
people are starting to understand what's under the surface. Is this just, when you see a prototype at a car show and you say, I'd really like to talk to an engineer about that prototype, they say no, because there's nothing under the skin. Sometimes not even a drivetrain. It's just a pusher. They rolled it out here. But this isn't just real. This doesn't just move uh, on its own power. This is a vehicle that is fully designed. They could go into production today. They won't. It's not time yet. And any delay between now and actual production means more time to get refinements in and done. We're seeing it testing, thanks to Joe Tegmeyer's videos out of Austin. We are seeing that they are actually doing daily tests of one or more cybercabs. It is being moved, the other 18, 19 are being moved all around the world for people to get a firsthand look so they can see for themselves. No, the doors aren't too wide. No, the car isn't too big or too small. It is fine. It is your worst fears are allayed, your greatest hopes are confirmed.
Well, so my opinion with regard to what's happening with the stock is that it really boils down to two products. It boils
Mm-hmm.
down to RoboTaxi slash full self-driving,
Mm-hmm.
and it boils down to Optimus. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the second leg of the run-up was primarily due to Bank of America with their note, I think that was about 2 weeks ago, where they mentioned Optimus. And I think that made it okay for the rest of the industry, the rest of the investing class to say, oh my goodness, there's a thing. And maybe
Mhm.
we should be, maybe we should have some optionality in our purchasing with regard to Optimus.
Let's explore this real quick because we're talking about a few things. There are whole categories of investors, right? The AI investors are seeing what's going on with Colossus, the giant mega compute at Giga Texas, and they're seeing what's going on with, so that's Cortex, and
Cortex.
Colossus is the one at XAI. Really, we can lump them together because it is the same competencies being exhibited. If you're looking at AI, these two things should have given you hope. Then there's the autonomy people. Autonomous technology, whether that's on four wheels or two legs, Optimus and RoboTaxi have both shown big promise this week. If you're that play in either category or both, you're excited. And then, of course, once all of that is in place, you look at the manufacturing. Maybe you only care about the manufacturing. Well, you've got forward-looking products in Optimus, in RoboCab, RoboTaxi, Cybercab, and you've got just cars in general, everything in general. Can they actually build these things? Can they build Optimus cheaper than the competition? I think the answer would be yes. 99 out of 100 analysts would say yes, probably all 100. And so any category you look at, there's an advantage. And if you're an investor in any one of those philosophies, it's a reasonably clear play.
Well, so what I did just for fun, well, just because I need content. No, it's because I really wanted to kind of get my arms and heads and everything around the idea of the RoboTaxi rollout. I came up with kind of a checklist, other, things that need to happen or probably will happen on our way to the actual cyber cab, maybe by the end of this year, early next year, starting to roll out. So I thought I'd throw these at you. There's a bunch of them. I think we're going to turn it into two parts here. And we're going to still have to kind of go over them rapidly because there's 26.
Ooh,
So people, if you hang in there, folks, I think you're going to learn a lot. Maybe not. Maybe you already have all this figured out, but it took me a long time to come up with this. All right. So I think the very first thing on the list is that 13.3, well, actually, it turned out they called it 13.2.1, goes wide to a huge positive reporting inside and outside the community. So right now it's all inside the community, but I think 13.2.1 is going to start getting some reporting outside the community. And you think?
I think you're on the money there. Look, I talk to people about my Tesla. I am that kid who can't stop talking about dinosaurs except it's Tesla. And my new philosophy, now that I'm on 12.5.6.5, I think, I'm not sure. The newest non-13 build, I think, is when I mention that I have FSD and anyone says anything negative, I stop them and say, let's go for a drive. Until you've gone for a drive in it, you don't get to say anything negative, period, because it is infinitely better than you think. And it is 10 times better than the 11s, which is probably the accounts that most people have heard are from 11 or before, and they don't have any experience. So 13, by all accounts that we're seeing, is a game changer. I look forward to trying it out myself, and it will be, I think you are correct that it will not only convince a lot of people who already own Teslas that this is great, but it will also be an opportunity for it to be experienced outside the Teslaverse.
Okay, number two is that the remaining issues get resolved. So there's a few remaining issues that people talk about, the blinking lights, maybe every once in a while not starting up at an intersection, school buses. There's I don't know, a half a dozen kind of things that are known negatives that I think will be resolved very quickly, maybe within the next 60 days.
Let me take a look and tell you which version I have. 12.5.6.4.
Okay.
When I got it, it said 12.5.6.4. Yeah. It said, by the way, I need your permission. I'm turning on microphones to listen for emergency vehicles.
Mhm.
You okay with that? Yes, absolutely. Great. That's closing one of the gaps. The gap from a parking spot to a parking spot, it appears that that is one that is closed as well. How many of those will be closed? I don't know. I'm confident some, maybe even half, if not all of them, will be addressed. And I believe that on early rollout, it'll be those things will work fairly consistently, but how consistently, we'll find out. So I think you could be right, but it hasn't been stated what we're going to get. So there you go.
All right. Yeah. So, but those, of course, need to be
Oh,
resolved
yeah.
before we can start putting them out into full autonomy. All right. Then,
I will say 12564 did run a red light for me. It paused, it hesitated, and then it just parked in the intersection during a red light. And I was like, boy, you were doing so good, my friend. Let's keep moving forward with the technology here, shall we?
all right. Number three would be the UN, the European Union, and China will announce their rules for autonomy and autonomous ride hailing. I'm saying that almost all of that gets taken care of in the first quarter, but certainly by the end of the first half.
Okay, I would say that by the first half seems reasonable. These things, I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, this, we need to get regulations sorted out." Do we? The regulations seem to be sorted out reasonably well for the intended scale today. I'm not worried about the regulatory environment. No single market can lag behind all the others once it works. They just can't. You will have, if Florida were to ban it, people would literally move to have robotaxis. They would literally move if they need that kind of mobility and it's that cheap, they would move. So I think that concern is overblown, and I agree that if a formal framework is not in place, a de facto framework will be.
Okay, so but on those three, the UN, the EU, and China, they've all stated that they're going to have a set of rules.
The UN, do
Yeah,
they? Do,
yeah, the
hmm.
UN has a special committee that's set up that they're going to do the rules, and Australia and Canada and a whole bunch of other countries have already said they'll take whatever the UN says.
Oh, great. Well, that would open up a few markets.
Yeah, few markets, yes. And then you have the US separately, which I think was more to your point, is that in the United States, maybe NISTA will give us some rules. The incoming administration seems to be talking about, uh, pushing forward a national rule that would help to make it more clear in terms of the various states. I think that would be wise, and I hope they do it. But it's only a maybe, but I think if it happens, it's going to happen very quickly.
Not worried about it.
Not worried about it. Okay. Number five, various states will agree to rules based on the above. You're not worried about that either because you just think they'll have to, they'll be forced to.
So let's talk about this. There's all these there's a good 5 states already that have formally approved it. Nevada, Arizona, California, Texas, and some others, I think. When Cybercab rolls out, it will take, you could spend a year and not fill those markets. And during that year, again, either it works or it doesn't. If it works, the regulatory issues will self-resolve. And if it doesn't, then we may see some pushback. I think Tesla knows not to roll it out prematurely because that would be terrible.
And
That would
on so
be
many levels.
on so many levels. If my concern would be more that another competitor would do it, that Zoox or someone else would say, well, I mean, if the floodgates are open, let's go whole hog, even though we're not quite ready. But I don't think those companies have the ability to scale the way Tesla does.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing, of course. And then I'm going to skip over a couple because we just kind of answered them within that. So then the next one would be uptakes dramatically improve. Uptake of FSD dramatically improves in all markets as Tesla continues the free trials and as the regulatory approval happens. So even before the RoboTaxi happens, we'll have the FSD approved in the EU, the UN markets that are approving based on UN. So I think there's going to be a kind of a two-step. First will be the FSD approval, then the RoboTaxi approvals. And then the uptake for personal drivers will be pretty substantial.
So I have FSD because this is what I do for a living. Version 11 was sufficiently bad that I would not have paid for it. And I didn't. I discontinued my FSD subscription because I wasn't using it and it wasn't good where I live. When version 12 came out, I resubscribed and and then I waited and I waited until I finally got it. But then with those free trials, you will get some believers. I'm confident when they did that first free trial of version 12 that there was an increase in adoption rate. I'm confident that when they did the second one, there was more. And if version 13 is anywhere close to as good as we're told it is, a free trial of that would further expand adoption. Yeah.
I thought the biggest deal was actually the hands-free.
So
Prior to
nice.
prior to hands-free, I was only using it occasionally. Now that it's hands-free, it's like wherever I go, I'm on FSD. Uptake. See, then number
Oh,
nine.
I would add that when we went to pick up glasses the other day at the optometrist, and I know that navigation is correct, but in the past, FSD has decided that the optometrist is on the other side of the street, even though the map clearly shows it's on the left. And I said, this time we're going to just ride it out and see where we go. And it did not go to the optometrist. It pulled me into Starbucks and put me in line. So I was like, all right, I guess we're getting coffee. And we did. We got coffee and it was delicious. And then when it pulled out, the sign said right turn only, and it did turn left and then pause. I was like, nope, we're done. We're done. So I did eventually get to the optometrist.
That's good. I think that at that point, once it's all approved in various places, the FSD portion of it is approved, that Tesla will incentivize FSD purchase ahead of coming price increases.
What I'd like to see, this is very possible. It's very possible. A lot of the things that you and I have predicted in the past have come true. I made a whole video about demand levers back when Tesla was sailing high, and the thought was, this isn't going to last forever. What will happen when the other manufacturers resume production, which a lot of them had to pause due to part shortages? And we laid out a bunch of the possibilities, additional colors, FSD transfer, lower price, all those things. And I think literally all of them came true. What was the question again?
That there
Sorry,
were
there's
these.
road construction outside. I don't know if
Oh,
you hear the beeps periodically,
oh, yeah.
but
But
what was the question?
the Tesla will give some
Oh,
incentives to purchase FSD, or as opposed to subscribing, to
yeah.
purchase it before coming price increases, because
Mm.
once the RoboTaxi becomes real, I think they're going to be charging more.
It is entirely possible. I don't know how they will handle it. It's a lot of moving parts, and it all comes down to the spreadsheet. Right now, it kind of doesn't make sense to buy it. The $100 a month means you'd have to own it for 80 months to break even. And most people do not own new cars for 80 months. I think what I would like to see is, as long as your subscription remains continuous, no price increase.
Mhm.
So get in at 100 now, because when it does go up, 119, 129, 199, you will always be locked in for life. And I think they could afford to do that. And I think it would be a smart move.
Okay. All right. Then, of course, and this one's pretty obvious, but we will now see now that we got version 13.2.1, we will now see point 2, point 3, point 4. We'll start seeing like we were seeing on 12, we'll see like every couple 3 weeks, we'll see these updates with really good, solid improvements.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cortex is just getting fired up. It is going to, I think, increase the pace of new things that will get better. If you've got a little tiny problem that only affects 1 in 100,000 drives, it can be addressed. We now have the compute space to think about that little problem. I've had people ask me recently, there are people who are just discovering autonomy and have questions that a lot of us have been thinking through for years. And of course, someone the other day said, boy, I haven't seen anyone address this. And then he described the trolley problem. So, well, this question is actually hundreds of years old. So will my Tesla crash into the kid or drive into oncoming traffic? What's it going to do? And I asked my son to think about it because he's very smart. And he said, well, just slam on the brakes. I said, yes, but now I have a new answer. Because now that we're end-to-end neural nets, the answer is it's trained on your driving, my friend. What would you have done? And that's the answer.
Okay, interesting. Okay, then the next thing would be mainstream automotive press, the financial press, and even some national news press begins positive coverage because it's so good they can no longer ignore it.
Oh my goodness, Randy, you are nailing it today. I think that is going to follow. We've seen Edmunds come around and say, I think this is our car of the year. We've seen, I think, Car and Driver, Road and Track, one of the ampersand publications went ahead and said, yeah, Model 3 refresh is a fantastic car. We've seen, who is it, Jason Camisa say, the BMW M Series no longer has a reason to exist. These are, now mind you, he has made a fortune by saying nice things about Tesla, and that can kind of push you into a corner. But when you look at all of this on the whole, it gets really hard to look at it any other way. I saw a great list. I almost saved it for our show, but it was just too dumb, that showed the top 10 selling cars in the US this year. And not only was the F-150 not on the list, but no Teslas were on the list. I'm like, well, didn't make the top 10. Okay, I don't know what this list is. I don't know what you're defining as a car.
Yeah.
It weird. So I think you're right. I think all of those will have to come around. I've seen a lot of people who haven't liked me in the past who have seen my recent coverage and said, okay, this is actually, Brian does actually know what he's talking about. So sometimes you have to let your reputation overpower people's opinion of you.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah.
There's even a few people that don't think I know what I'm talking about. I can't.
Well, I never
No, I
think
know.
that you know what you're talking
They have
about.
never spoken to my mother. If they'd spoken to her, they would know better. All right. So number 12, a licensing deal will be signed.
So maybe not signed, but a memorandum of understanding would be sufficient. That is something that would be, if version 13 is as good as it appears to be, I think the time is right for someone to get in. I had posted on X last week saying, look, I think Elon should make it known that whoever signs the first one is going to get the best deal, and everyone thereafter is going to get a slightly not as good deal. And it got interesting responses. A lot of people saying it's a good idea. A lot of people saying, no, just let the product speak for itself. And I think all of those viewpoints are valid. I think that it would be, there are companies that simply don't have the money to do anything else. One of my concerns was that because Cybertrucks took so long to get FSD, that porting it to other vehicles would be complicated and cumbersome. So I asked the engineers about this last week in San Jose, and what they told me is, no, it's very easy to do. It
Oh,
is the reason the Cybertruck was complicated wasn't, it was in part because it's so big, but part of it was the rear steer. It's a
interesting.
whole new control mechanism that changes how a car operates in 3D
Interesting.
space. Yeah. So there's so porting it to other vehicles would not be prohibitive. I think the problem is that Tesla uh, would expect to retain an appropriate amount of the revenue and control of the data. I
Yeah.
get it. Somebody said, well, they should say, look, Ford, we'll let you put it on your cars and we'll let you keep a copy of the data if you want to use it. No, no, no. Tesla can keep the data. In fact, I would say, if I was Tesla, I would say, look, if you want to put it on a car, that's great, but you have to put it on every model of that car that you sell
Mm.
so that the data is there and the future potential is there. And I'm not going to give you more than 10% of the revenue, and you have to pay for the hardware. So I think that would be too much to ask for them of them today. Or, some kind of deal where maybe the first, $1,000 gets clawed back to cover the expense of putting it in the cars. But I think they would be wise to make some announcement.
Okay, yes, I think, but I think I think it has to be imminent at this point
It
with the
has to be.
with the kind of response we're getting from the field. Uh, Some of these people, my guess would be, now this is how I would be doing it if I was Ford or anybody else. I'd be asking to get 13 as soon as it comes out so that I can make a judgment.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to be waiting until, you and I finally get it.
Yeah,
I would be saying, look, I'm interested in potentially licensing this thing. So
right.
please update my car
Yeah,
so I can take it for a drive. And
yeah.
at some point, they would be seeing what AJ not AJ,
AI driver,
AI driver and Chuck,
Dirty Tesla,
they'll be
Chuck
seeing
Cook.
what these guys are seeing, and they would be like, okay, we're cooked if we don't do this.
I love that your approach is so much smarter than what I had in my head. My approach was we'll just tell us and bring us a Model 3 or Y and let our engineers borrow it for a week. No, give me your VIN number and I'll just push it and you will have it. You'll just have it. And then you can do whatever you want with it in a car you already have. So you know I didn't do anything to the car to make it special. It's on your car. And I think that would be, yeah, that's the way to see. It's really hard to change our mindset from the old way to the new way. So this is valuable, Randy. Thank you
Oh,
for your
okay. Oh,
young, flexible brain
just this one time.
dragging me into the future this one time. Mhm.
All right. The next one is that.
I real quick on this, had a chance. I had the pleasure of chatting on Reddit to a gentleman who doesn't know that I know he's a Waymo engineer. He loves to speak out on all kinds of uh, electric vehicle topics and especially autonomous vehicle topics. And he will say, I am in the industry, but he won't say where he works. It's Waymo. And anytime someone brings up Tesla, he says they're a joke. Everyone in the industry says they're a joke because they don't have LiDAR. Well, just because you have LiDAR doesn't mean everyone does. Chinese companies have already begun removing LiDAR from their autonomous vehicles because it is a crutch in their opinion. And I said, I have had a chance to talk with a number of people in the autonomous space, and not one of them has said that Tesla's a joke. Some of them say, I think their approach may be the wrong one, but that's a lot more couched than it's a
Yes,
joke.
right.
And he's like, oh, good. You talked to some junior engineers. Right. I get it. You don't know who I am, even though I'm using my real handle that matches on every platform. Look, buddy, why don't you come on the show? Come on the show. Let's talk it out. And he did not respond.
All right. So then once one licensing deal is signed,
Oh
more
yeah,
licensing
floodgates.
deals, the floodgates will be open.
Yeah.
It'll be like the charging system. So we will have multiple then deals signed. Then number 14, some kind of a deal, and maybe it'll be different kind of deals for each one. And maybe it'll be us going to them, and maybe it'll be them coming to us, but something will happen with Uber, Lyft, and other kinds of ride-hailing companies. Some kind of arrangement. It will be something, as you just pointed out, with the licensing. It'll be something that is very Tesla-centric, better for Tesla than it is for these other folks, but there will be a way for them to participate.
Uber has already expressed interest.
Right.
They know that there are only so many players out there. Is the Intel Mobileye deal going to work? Does Bosch have anything that's going to compete? At this point, maybe it's tough to say, but if we're still saying if version 13 is as good as it looks, Tesla has taken a commanding lead in real FSD. Uh, well, they're going to still need teleoperators. Yeah, that's a regulation, and I think a good one because you need to have an emergency button. You need to have essentially OnStar. It's not like Cruise where they've got 2.5 drivers for every vehicle. It's more like OnStar where they've got one for every 5 or 10,000, maybe 100,000. I don't know. I don't know how many operators OnStar has. So it's yeah, it's an approach that looks like it is at the moment the best. And part of that, the best is unlike Waymo, which appears to be working. It appears to be getting better. It appears that they're able to scale without scaling directly the number of teleoperators they're using. The difference is instead of 100, 150,000 per vehicle, it's going to be a fraction of that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so they even Waymo, I didn't have Waymo on the list, but I suspect that even Waymo, if it's clear, if it's obvious that Tesla can do everything that Waymo wants a car to do, why would they continue down their own path if the capital expense is dramatically higher than just buying a Tesla?
Well, you're thinking of the sunk cost fallacy, but they're thinking of the sunk cost solution. So they've got a different perspective.
Well, at least one person thinks that the Waymo vehicles would not be like Teslas in another regard. So there's one thing is I'm spending 40,000 a vehicle versus 25,000 a vehicle or something in order to put it on the road. But there's the second part, which may be that the Waymo vehicle, the rest of the car is not designed to go 500,000 miles like a Tesla.
That is a big part of it. But it's not going to be 40,000. The cars that they're starting with cost more than 40,000, and then they're adding all the other stuff. You could be at easily 70, even at scale 70,000 a car. So it doesn't scale the same. And yeah, if you're only getting 150, 200,000 miles on a Waymo versus 500,000. And if you're the owner, let's say you only plan to, let's say you don't believe that a Cybercab will go more than 200,000 miles. Let's say you are in a rough part of town and it's going to get real beat up, and the passengers are lumberjacks and they're going to be wearing their spurs. So let's say all that. The cost of cleaning it's going to be less. The cost of maintenance is going to be less. The number of moving parts is going to be less. When a LiDAR goes out, that car is stranded, and it's redundant systems. It can probably get to the curb safely, but I don't think it'll navigate all the way back without a tow truck. So what do we do then? And how long does it take to fix something that fiddly? Are parts going to be readily available for something that's only produced in the tens of thousands versus hundreds of thousands or millions? You and I know the answer. And I think analysts are starting to wake up to the answer as well.
All right. Well, we're going to stop at that point and pick
Mhm.
it up in part two tomorrow. And what we're going to do in part two is we're going to talk about the actual rollout, the actual beginning of what's going to happen in the summer, what's going to happen with some of the products, not just the cars. There's other things. We're going to be talking about what that really means in terms of the stepwise. Now, this is going to be a lot of speculation because that's what we do. Because we don't know what Tesla's really going to do, but I'm going to speculate. You're going to either tell me I'm full of it, or you're going to tell me you think I'm right, or provide your own speculation. That's what we're going to pick up in part two.
All right. Speculator, alligator.
It's, I have no response. That's too good. To all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.